I think that we have a quorum of council, so we can go ahead and wait for Rob to join. He should just be, I think he said maybe 10 minutes late, just due to ferries.
And Maureen should be joining us any moment.
Sorry, who is that, Liam?
Maureen.
Okay, thank you.
Maureen, for those of you who don't know, Maureen is Councillor Nicholson, another member of Bowen Council.
Sorry.
You mean you guys all didn't get the pre-binder with pictures and bios of all of us for this meeting like we used to get?
Yeah, no, those days are over.
No, I'm talking about the Island Trust.
Yeah, I know. Those days are over.
Yeah,
Those
need an update.
Those days are over. Yeah.
Councilor Nicholson is just joining us now.
Don't need binders with Zoom.
We know you, Allison. Isn't that enough?
Oh, they gotta know
Well, that really
everybody
matters.
else too. So have they made any more
Maureen.
tomato chutney at Barnabas yet?
I think they got cleaned out at Christmas, and I doubt
Oh.
they've started up again.
Well, they have to wait for the tomatoes to grow, I guess.
I would have thought so.
Yeah. I am forced to buy the one from Salt Spring. That
Oh,
a
poor you.
little further afield.
All right, well, welcome everybody. It's been a long time since we've all been together again. I wonder if we want to just do a quick go around, Peter. If you want to just say who for your crew and that person can stick up a hand, then we can just go through it that way. I think that's probably the best way.
Okay, that's fine. So I'll begin then. Peter
Yeah.
Luckham, I'm elected on Thetis Island, and that's in the Laxon and Penellicut territory, and it's an honor and privilege to work and live here. And my colleagues on executive committee, all of us working across the Coast Salish territory, of course. You already know Sue Ellen Fast, Bowen Island Municipal Councillor and executive committee member. And just going through my screen here, I see Laura Patrick there.
Yeah.
Salt Spring
Hi, Laura.
Island. You want to make a remark?
Oh, hello.
And Dan Rogers.
Hello, happy
Vice
to be here in the Squamish territory and Alcatson.
Thank you, Dan. And then, of course, our CEO, Ross Hotzenpiller.
Good afternoon. Happy to be with you all.
And
Lovely to see you.
It's hard. It's not just financial. It's human resources, financial, IT is Julia Mobbs. Thank you for joining us today, Julia. And then our other with a staff member with a big portfolio is Claire Frater. Everything from advocacy to policy to soups and nuts, I think. And the nuts part is me, I think. Anyway, that's our team here today. So back to you, Mayor Anders. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much for that, Peter. And welcome to all of you for sure. And on our side, coming from Mccollum and the unceded territory, traditional territory of the Squamish Nation, we'll bring you first councillors. I've got Michael Hale, of course, as you know. Thanks, Michael. And Sue Ellen one more time. Hand up, Maureen. Did you miss that part? I guess you got your name under there. Rob Winan, who's going to, oh, there is Rob. Okay, good. Good to see you.
Got here.
Yeah, thank you. David Hawking. Thank you, David. Allison Morris, of course. Thank you. And we also have Hope Dallas, our corporate officer. Thank you, Hope. Liam Edwards, CAO. I don't know who's had to do anything with Liam. And Raj Hare, the CFO, is here also.
Hi, everybody.
Top there, Raj. And Daniel Martin, our planner and community planner. Thank you, Daniel. So that's the works for us. I think we'll just get started here. This is going to be it's the agenda for the joint meeting of the Bowen Island Municipal Council and the Island Trust Executive Council for Tuesday, February the 23rd, 2021. I'd like to open this meeting, and the first bit on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. And Hope, I think you've got a couple of little late items there.
Yes, there are two items that were circulated by email to both the Municipal Council and the Executive Committee. One was from an email from Trustee and Councillor Fast, and one from Trustee and Councillor Kale. So you should have received those.
All right. Thanks, Hope. And so the approval of the agenda, does anybody have anything that they would like to add to the agenda at this time? All right. And then I'll move that the approval of the agenda, the council approve the agenda for the February 23rd, 2021 joint meeting of the Bowen Island Municipal Council and the Island Trust Executive Committee. Special council meeting. I will move that. I'll have a second somewhere in there. Okay, I got Sue. That works both ways, doesn't it? And all in favor. There's a lot to count there, but I think we got them all. I think we got them all. All right, so we're going to move on to public comments. Hope, how many people do we have?
We do have a number of members of the public wishing to speak this evening. So we have 9 in total. And we'll start off with Nearest Pool.
All right, and just for it's kind of short notice, but let's try to keep them very short. I'd like to keep them down to about 2 minutes. We've got a lot of items to cover today, so if you can sort of shorten her up or give us a real fast talk, that would be much appreciated. Neris, welcome, and go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you for Bowen Island Council and all the trustees on the Islands Trust and staff. I'm just here to express support for the Islands Trust. I believe we receive value for our money. We do not pay more than other islands. Our taxation amount is based on the assessed value of our homes and based on the services that we receive. As an island within the Islands Trust, as everyone knows, we fall under that critical mandate of preserve and protect, which makes us unique. I think if we were not part of the Islands Trust, we would be just another suburb of Greater Vancouver. And if you want to know what that might look like, go to Maple Ridge. I grew up over many years visiting my grandmother and aunt out there, and it's really sad to go out there now. It used to be a beautiful rural area, and it is no longer. It's an example of what happens with rampant development. And I think as an island within the Islands Trust, under that mandate, we are able to consider all development on our island in light of that mandate. Regardless of who we may choose for any council term, we are still guided by that mandate, which I think is critical. In addition, as part of that federation, we receive many benefits. Our small island voice becomes much larger when it comes to advocacy for things like no logging, waterfront land protections, motorized vehicles on Crown lands, derelict vessel removal, and so on. The Islands Trust Conservancy, the conservation arm, has supported and continues to support the Bowen Island Conservancy's efforts to conserve valuable waterfront land at Cape Roger Curtis through financial contributions and other support. So my message to all is keep up the good work, Islands Trust. You're doing a great job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Neris. Nice to see you again.
Next, we have Rosemary Knight.
All right, Rosemary.
Thanks very much. Great to see all of you. I'm really here to say a huge thank you to the Islands Trust. It's too easy sometimes on this island to get focused on the human needs, a need for affordable housing, a need for a community center, a need for a healthcare center, and lose track of the great need facing us all on this planet, a need to stop the loss of biodiversity. So it is so essential for us on this island, while we're building housing, building centers, to do our part as mandated through the Islands Trust Act, to do our part to preserve and protect the ecological integrity of this place on the planet, our island. And that's hard to do. You don't have the birds, the trees, the frogs signing up for the public comment period, constantly asking for stuff, unlike everyone else who lives on this island. So it is so fantastic to have the Islands Trust as partners, guiding us and supporting us in our work to fulfill our responsibility. It's truly our responsibility. It's under the Islands Trust Act. So I looked at my taxes. I pay $123 $2,012.49 every year to the Islands Trust. And all I can say is, wow, what a deal. To get the skill set that you provide that we lack on this island, to be partners with you as we take on the thoughtful, committed, data-driven, thanks to you, environmental stewardship of this island. So I can't say thank you enough to the Islands Trust, and I am just so privileged, so delighted to be on an island that is an island municipality within the trust. And as we all know, I'll finish with what the Islands Trust always reminds us: you need to be so much more careful with an island. So thank you all.
Thank you, Rosemary.
Next, we have Bob Turner.
All right, Bob, welcome. You're
Bob, you're muted.
muted.
Thank you.
Okay,
That makes a big difference.
it does.
My comments are for the Islands Trust Executive Committee. And my simple message to you is that the ecological inventory work you commission for our islands is wonderfully important, and that you play a really vital leadership role by making it available to our public. And I wanted to give you 3 examples in that regard. I'm part of the Bowen Island Conservancy, and we're working currently with the Bowen Island Municipality, the Sea Change Marine Conservation Society, and David Suzuki Foundation on the restoration of Mannion Bay. And absolutely critical to our work has been the eelgrass mapping that the Islands Trust conducted for all the islands in Howe Sound. That mapping was done in 2013. I mean, long before any of us on Bowen were really alert to the critical importance of eelgrass. And to me, conducting this mapping of this vital natural asset well ahead of the curve is real leadership on the part of the Islands Trust. You know, a second example that comes to mind is that as part of myself, as part of the Bowen Island Conservancy, we're currently working on baseline inventory and a management plan for our newly acquired 32 acres of waterfront land on the southeast corner of Bowen. And when we were considering acquiring this land, we were immediately able to use the Islands Trust 2005 sensitive ecosystem inventory mapping to determine the ecological values of the land, which was a huge lift. We could look at the lands, we could look at the rest of Bowen, we could see what those lands had that were, you know, particularly rare, particularly precious, and that allowed us to really prioritize those lands as a key acquisition. A third example that comes to mind is in 2016 and 2017, volunteers from our conservancy conducted forage fish sampling on the beaches of Bowen. And again, we had the advantage of the Islands Trust 2014 forage fish habitat mapping for Bowen to guide our sampling. So with all of that in mind, when I stand back and look at the big picture and see sort of a world where biodiversity worldwide seems to be in free fall, I think it is so important that our job as citizens, as governments, is to fight that trend in the places that we love. And so I'm so thankful to have the Islands Trust as a conservation partner for our community. And I'm so thankful to live in a part of the world where our government upholds the preserve and protect mandate of the Islands Trust. My request to you really is to continue to play a leadership role, getting out in front of issues by providing good information, good assessment, analysis, and data. We need it more than ever. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob.
Next, we have Emily Erickson Mccollum.
Emily, welcome. You go ahead.
Hi, everyone. It's my first experience of doing something like this, and I want to thank you all for making it possible. It's a privilege to be able to speak to the council and to the members of the Islands Trust, and I'm extremely grateful that you are here, all of you. I'm here to speak in favor of the Islands Trust, and I want to hit on 2 specific points. The first one is that as an island, our needs are unique. Our economic, our planning, our development needs are unique. And we share those aspects of uniqueness most with the other islands in the Salish Sea, not with Vancouver, not with Maple Ridge, not with Richmond, with those other islands. And combining our knowledge with those other islands through a body like the Islands Trust, which organizes and manages that information, only strengthens us. Politically, as somebody pointed out, in terms of issues like logging and ecosystem protection and so on, and also in terms of our social network in connecting with the other islands. So that's the first thing. The second one is we love our green spaces. Almost every, as far as I know, every single public engagement that Bowen has initiated in order to understand our plan for the island, one of the first things that people say that they value about the island, often the very top thing, is the green space, the trees, the air, the light. That doesn't happen by accident. We have it now as a gift because we haven't grown to the point where we've destroyed it all. It is known that municipal and local governments have short-term planning cycles. It's the nature of the beast. Priorities change with the changes in elected officials. And those short-term planning cycles often focus on immediate and human-centered needs and forget the gift of the air and the water and the land around us. And in order to protect that, we need an overarching body that has a longer term view that says, hold it. Okay, let's look at this in the broader perspective. And I think we desperately need that. As I'm not sure who pointed it out, the development, I think it was, you spoke first. All of a sudden, I can't remember your name. I hate that. Neris, the development in Maple Ridge. Anywhere in the lower mainland, you can look and see what happens with development when there isn't an overall planning body that has a concern to protect and preserve the green spaces. So I want to say thank you to the Islands Trust and keep up the good work. And as far as I'm concerned, the $120 odd in my tax is such a deal. And I would imagine that anybody who really thought about it that way would agree. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily.
Next, Brent O'Malley.
Welcome, Brent.
Thank you very much. I am not going to add anything insightful here except to just throw my voice behind all of the articulate people who've spoken already in support of the Islands Trust. I just think it is so important that Bowen remains part of the trust, and that I, like others have already expressed, my tax dollars are well spent, and I fully support continuing to pay into this fund so that Bowen remains to reap all of the benefits from all of the mapping that Bob talked about and the environmental stewardship and everything else. It's just super important. So I just wanted to show up and say, yay, thank you very much. And I want to remain part.
Thank you, Brent.
Next, we have Susan Alexander.
Hello, Susan. Welcome.
Hey, hi, everyone. This is so fun. Good afternoon, Mayor, councillors, trustees, staff, and Bowen Islanders. I am speaking to you guys on behalf of Bowen Island to stay part of the trust as well. You know, sometimes it's so easy to forget that we're not part of the city. We're so close to the North Shore in Vancouver, and so many of us work in the city and have family and close ties there. But we are, first of all, on the island, and we have all that fragility and all that limitation that an island has. And with the help of the Islands Trust, we look at what we've got. We've got 3 nature reserves. And I don't know about you guys, but during COVID, I've spent a lot more time in the woods. And I live close to Fairy Fen, so especially Fairy Fen and doing the walking trails. And I've actually used the Islands Trust ecosystem mapping just to see where I've been and kind of try to understand my own backyard better. And I'm thinking that if folks don't feel like we're getting our money's worth, let's look more closely and work more closely with the Islands Trust. I'd like us to do more conservation covenants with private owners, have more nature reserves, more checkups of nature. And let's explore, their freshwater strategies and use their expertise in things like rainwater harvesting, because our summers are only getting hotter and drier. I'd also like more oversight on amendments to our official community plan, the plan we created together to guide managed growth on this island. And in Metro Vancouver's overall plan for our region, they designate Bowen Island as rural for conservation and recreation, not urban, not suburban. So with the help of the Islands Trust, I think we can keep that identity while living right next to a city. And someone told me recently that an island can be a place of first extinction or last refuge. So which one do we want to be? That's all I got for you.
Thank you, Susan. Hope, any more?
Yes, sorry. The next 3 comments were submitted by email and they were asked that they be read aloud. So I'll just do that now. The first is from Emily Van Lith Jude. Dear council members, mayor and staff, as well as my fellow community members who will hear this letter, I want to share my support for Bowen's membership in the Islands Trust, specifically the value that I have personally experienced. My life's passion and work has been educating people about our home, allowing them to get to know their own neighborhood, the island, and the greater community of islands that we're a part of through in-person outings, workshops, art, community events, and organizations, and more recently, my video series and activity book. Understanding our own personal connection to the land we live on, as well as the ecology and greater community of islands we are a part of, is crucial to the development of community and a feeling of belonging, a healthy community, as well as to the preservation of our natural resources. People often worry that with too much development, Bowen Island will be another West Vancouver. However, for all West Van's development, they may also back up upon a vast mountain wilderness, which cleans their air and water and balances the ecology of the area. Bowen's wilderness is finite. We only have 3 small mountains and a need to preserve large pieces of wilderness in order to keep our ecology in balance. The Islands Trust has been crucial to our community, not only in the fact that it keeps us connected with other islands in the Georgia Strait, but also for the specific support we receive from them in both education, research, and wilderness preservation. The work of the Islands Trust helps us to preserve, understand, and connect with our home ecology, something that is essential to our health as islanders. Thank you so much for hearing me, Emily Van Lith Jude. The next is from Edna Thompson, although I did see that she was in the meeting. So Edna, Are you here?
I see her there.
She's here. Where do I see her? Edna, did you want to speak to your comments? Perhaps I'll read it. It's quite short. So from Edna, as part of the Islands Trust since 1974, we on Bowen Island have benefited under its mandate to protect and preserve. Our municipality needs to stay connected and in consultation with them to preserve our green oasis here. Now more than ever, and especially over any land use projects that involve massive land clearing or for development, there are many other areas of contribution are essential elements of our island management. Edna Thompson. The last is from Marcus Romer, and it's to Mayor and Council. I would like to express my desire for Bowen Island to remain a part of the Islands Trust. As an island community in Howe Sound on the Georgia Strait, we benefit greatly from having the support of the Islands Trust here. It would be foolish and irresponsible to throw this away. Sincerely, Marcus Romer. And that concludes public comment.
Okay, thank you. Is there anybody else out there that would like to say anything? If not, and we'll move on. And thank you very much, everybody, for your comments. It's nice to have people involved. So we're going to for discussion topics here. And 3.1 is the Island Trust Policy Statement Project Update. Who's going to take that on, Russ? Or?
Well, actually, if you don't mind, Mayor Anders, I would just make an introductory remark there.
Okay, I don't mind at all.
That okay, thank you. Mostly this is on the agenda as reference. As you know, Claire Frater, the Director of Trust Area Services, and her team, Lisa Wilcox included, our intergovernmental liaison, came over to your island and provided an update to your council about the work. And we just thought this might be an opportunity if there were any questions about the policy statement amendment work. And also take this opportunity to mention that on March the 3rd, we'll be rolling out our policy statement virtual town hall, and that'll be open to everybody to join us in the next phase of public consultation. So I would just ask if there's any questions or remarks with respect to the policy statement, and perhaps myself or some of the other executive committee members or staff, Claire Frater particularly, might be able to answer.
Okay. I can't seem to get my symbols on. Can somebody, if you're just, if you do have a question, just put your hand up, please.
Trustee Councillor Kale has his hand up.
All right, Michael, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. I think we all saw the survey that came out from the policy statement, and I had a chance to speak to CAO Hottenspiller, I think yesterday or the day before, and asking when will we be able to get the results from that survey, and probably of special interest, the surveys that were completed from Bowen Island. So I gather it is coming soon, but two very significant surveys I think were done, and I would be curious or would like to know when we will actually get the results of those, including the comments raised from Bowen Island on the policy statement.
Thank you, Mike.
Right, thank you. Thank you, Michael. I might just defer to Claire Frater here. We did actually discuss this briefly at a recent meeting, and there are some complications around extracting the Bowen specific data, but Claire, Director of Trust Area Services, Claire Frater, can you address that?
No, I'm hopeful. I think we've worked out a process to do it, and we hope to have those done by next week for you.
Perfect.
Thank you very much. That would be hugely appreciated, Claire, and there'll be quite a lot of reading there. So sooner we have it, that's excellent. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Michael. Anybody else? All right, we're going to move on to 3.2, which is the 2021 Islands Trust budget and Bowen Island tax levy. And section A is the Bowen Island page of the Islands Trust website that Claire did.
Yeah, so Mr. Mayor, if it's all right, I'll speak to that one as well.
Absolutely.
You may be aware the Islands Trust for some time now, the Islands Trust has dedicated a budget to a complete rework of the Islands Trust website, and that we anticipate will be rolling out in the near future. It's a much revised version with a much better search engine and metadata attached to the documents, as well as some more recent thinking around reconciliation and climate change work being reflected in that. We want to provide the opportunity for you to contribute to what will be a Bowen page on there as a member of Trust Council. And so just want to make sure that you and your staff are aware of this work, and that we would welcome comments on the Bowen page, particularly with respect to making sure that you're being represented appropriately on that. And so would just ask again for any questions or thoughts. Otherwise, out the Director of Trust Area Services, Claire Frater, would be much appreciated.
All right, thanks, Peter. And I don't see any hands up there. So we'll just move on to the next section here. Which is the briefing notes from CAO. Russ Hotzenpiller, read the benefits of inclusion in the Islands Trust, dated
Right, and
2020. Over to you, Russ.
and Russ,
Oh, sorry, Peter.
Russ may want to address that. However, that briefing note was created essentially out of the last meeting, and was sent to Councillor Kale, and so certainly time has marched on since then. I don't know that there's anything more to add to that at this time, but again, if there are any questions, Councillor Fast also created a document summarizing that briefing note in a slightly different fashion. And so again, there might be questions. And I noticed that Trustee, or it's hard to stop calling people trustee, but Councillor Morrison, your hand was up, and she was a past trustee, so it's really confusing.
Allison, Mike?
Not used to my iPad. The survey that was done on the budget, is it possible to get the answers from just the Bowen contributors? I don't know if that's a Julia question or a Claire question.
Russ can take a stab at it if.
Perfect, Russ. Thank you.
Yes, I think that talking with Claire, she could easily answer this. Yeah, I think that we could absolutely do that, and we could. I think it's basically within the same time frame that Claire mentioned just a few moments ago. Sometime next week, we'd be able to parse those responses out. The overall budget survey information is out, and we're almost cresting 1,000 people. And Allison will recall back in the lonely, cold days of yesteryear, we only had 100 or 150 people. So it is good news, just trust-wide, that we're starting to get people picking up and responding with some, I don't know the exact statistic, but they're spending 15 minutes or some period of time answering the budget survey. So I think the short answer is yes.
That's interesting. Thanks. And I guess the other question was, I'm assuming from the comments that were in the Financial Planning Committee agenda package from Julia and her reports that our assessed value share stayed the same this year. It didn't go up, or did it go up? I can't remember.
Go up.
So it actually did increase in the current year. I believe last year it was around 16.5%. It's up to 18.3% this year.
18.3. Okay. And did Salt Springs go up or hold flat?
Oh, I'd have to pull up that information. I don't recall off the top of my head. Let me do a quick look here. It went up just around 2 percentage points.
Okay, so they're sitting at about 35 now, or
39.7.
39.
That's a percentage of the LTCs only. Actually, when we take Bowen into consideration, it's 32.5%.
Yeah.
Versus last year's 30.4%.
So between the two of us, we're still roughly 50% of the value of the trust.
Significant portion, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Are you going to produce the schedule that shows everybody's share? You have in past years.
If I can jump in, if you're thinking about the allocated financial statements?
No, I'm talking about everybody's share of the assessed value for the current, from the current assessment. Usually you've got a schedule in there, but maybe it's you're waiting for the authenticated roll to come out.
So we work off of the data that's provided early January from December information. So that information is available, and I can certainly make it, I can provide it. We haven't included it in the FPC agenda packages, I think for the last couple of years, but it's public information. I'm happy to share it if it's useful.
Yeah, it's just, it says, yeah, it's not an easy number to get because they're not specific assessment areas. So yeah, it's just interesting to see how everybody around the island is faring with assessed values, which are key to how much we pay. Thanks.
Yeah. They are, some of our assessments on Bowen have gone up 29% this year. Absolutely brutal.
I can tell you that in the Gambier Keats area that has happened as well.
Yeah.
I think we're seeing a lot of the spillover effect of recreational property just going and others going up.
Yeah.
I think our proportion is going to be higher than most other of the Islands Trust areas, although I know there's been lots of increased assessments in other areas as well.
Yeah, it's a good point, Dan. And I think ours are probably more residential than recreational. I think we're getting a big overflow out of Vancouver and that sort of thing, but we've never seen real estate prices like this on Bowen. So it's a huge factor for us as far as housing is concerned and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Else
Well, if
come
it
in on that
helps,
one?
if it helps, even little Thetis Island here with their one snowplow, my house has been reassessed at 30% higher than last year. And even after fighting with them as much as you are allowed to fight, it's still at 25% over last year. So it's happening across the board.
Yeah. Interesting days, all right. Okay, we'll move on to 3.3, which is
that's
municipality tax assessment notice, specialized insert. Who's going to take that on?
Mr. Mayor, one of your councillors has their hand up.
Oh, I see. Oh, Councillor Morse.
Oh, sorry, I didn't remove it.
Okay, thank you.
I'm used to hope doing
Councillor
that.
Morris, Nicholson.
Right. Councillor Nicholson, yeah.
Oh, did you? Okay, Maureen, go ahead.
Thank you. The comments about the housing values going up across the board, that is a concern for many of us. What might we do in response to that in relation to the Islands Trust budget?
If I can jump in, I think everybody across the whole Islands Trust is taxed at the same rate. So per, I don't know exactly what that rate is, but whether you live on Lasqueti or Salt Spring or Bowen or Keats, you whatever 100,000, maybe I should, okay, I'm getting shaking hits, so I'm not sure about that. Don't we all get charged at the same?
You do.
No. Bowen gets requisitioned for its amount. The rest of the Islands Trust, it's divided up and it becomes a common rate to everybody.
Right. Well, yeah, it's like comparing apples and oranges to compare Bowen to, but the rest of us are all, as I understand it, as Councillor Morse says, at the same effective rates. So, I mean, maybe the director of administrative service could, but there's a percentage of the Bowen increase or potential increase that's related to market increase as opposed to, but I'm not sure what that is anymore.
Okay.
Well, that's because our percentage went up to 18.3 of the total trust, and it was, yeah. Did it go up or did it go down, Julia? I have a memory of 18.7 in my head, but maybe that was the first cut.
18.7 was a number of years ago. I think that was the year before last year.
Yeah. So we've got a little bit of a drop then, which is good.
It dipped down last year and it's now come back up for the current year.
Yeah. So I guess my question was getting more at in the context of a discussion of increased assessed values on Bowen and elsewhere in the Islands Trust. To what extent do we have to actually be concerned about that? If it is an across the board increase throughout the trust, or a similar increase throughout the trust?
Yeah, Maureen, maybe I'll just, I'm not sure if this is what you're getting at, but outside of our property taxation and the assessed value is certainly changing the character of our communities because property values are getting out of the reach of young families and people that have grown up for generations on the island. And certainly that estate management piece of the puzzle has gotten more complex, and we're seeing property that has been in families for many years changing hands to newcomers, and not that newcomers are bad, but it's certainly changing the demographic of our communities simply based upon property values. And I'm not sure if that's the implication that you're looking at, but
That's
certainly
the
all of
direction.
the housing.
Yeah, that's the direction I was hoping might be brought up here.
Yeah.
Thank you, Peter.
Yeah. So there's certainly room there for us to work together and collaborate however we possibly can. Certainly on Salt Spring, we're doing some housing work initiatives, looking at that in respect of how it's affecting the natural environment, how climate change is impacting it, the changing demographic, and those concerns are spread throughout the trust area. And indeed, we share that with Bowen Island. Certainly, if your property values are affected slightly differently because of your geographic proximity to the city, those concerns must be even greater on your island.
Yeah.
Yeah, they certainly are. The other issue we have here, Peter, is that a lot of the rental houses were, because the market wasn't that good, so a lot of the houses were rented out. And of course, now with the market where it's at, which is insane, all these houses are going on the market, and there's people that have rented and brought up their families on Bowen Island, and there's absolutely nowhere for them here. People that have been here for 20 years are having to move back to the mainland because there's no rental property here. So it's really tough right now. Michael?
Yes, firstly, let me preempt my remarks by saying there are no villains here. Market forces are market forces. Yeah. Islands Trust, Bowen Municipality, sweep it aside because it is what it is. However, and I would refer you to those letters I submitted, and I submitted letters because I realized there were going to be several people making verbal presentations, and I think for the sake of this meeting and brevity, I submitted the written comments. And I would ask you read it, because there is quite a good understanding. This formula is complicated, and Councillor Morse is probably the expert, but here on Bowen. But there is an understanding that the market forces pushing Bowen will have an upward pressure on this existing formula. And I think I have spoken to Julia Mobbs, I think some time ago, and we were talking about the fact that we cannot avoid those market pressures. We wish we could. They're undesirable. They cause the problems you're talking about. Peter, we are in accord here with the disadvantages that the fallout. However, it is, and please look at some of those letters, because there's a real understanding that this levy under the current formula is unlikely, subject to market changes, to make life easier for the Bowen share of this assessment. And that has been noted by the people on this island. And yes, it is indeed a matter of concern, as you've stated. So another point, I think, for discussion, because there's nothing at the moment as it stands right now we can do about the mathematics or the external pressures. They don't look friendly to Bowen.
Well, thank you for submitting those in writing. Appreciate that. And certainly, if there are solutions that that you thought should be brought forward, we're certainly open to hear what they might be.
Thank you, Peter. Sue Ellen?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that some of the other islands, in particular Salt Spring, which I think you mentioned, Peter, are looking at housing strategies that take into account some of the ecosystem and sustainability ideas. And personally, I'm interested in exploring the idea about how we can live more sustainably, or is a green lifestyle, or is the possibility for living a green lifestyle still possible on Bowen, and what frameworks or policies, like the policy statement being updated to do with climate change and things, could that help? and maybe by being more living in a more sustainable way and having multi-use pathways and bike trails and things, or bike paths, we can make other costs less and make it more so that more kinds of people, so that we still have the vibrant range of people living on Bowen and living in a sustainable way, so that we don't lose the qualities that we like. But I'm watching Salt Spring with interest, and I know there's some other islands doing interesting things about how to plan for housing. Not that we can do much about BC assessment though.
Oh, true that. All right, so we'll move on to 3.3 now, which is the Bowen Island Municipality Tax Assessment Notice Specialized Insert.
Right, Mr. Mayor, I might suggest that Julia Bobbs might be able to advise you on the details of this, but I understand that her and your Chief Financial Officer, Raj Hayer, have had some discussion about inserting an information circular with respect to the Islands Trust and Bowen Island Municipality in your tax assessment notice, and we're prepared to help with that if we can. But can I, Julia, is that you that wanted to pick up on that, or is that Claire that wants to pick up on that?
So I can start us off. I'm sure Director Frater will be able to subsidize my comments. But yes, this is a conversation that I had with Raj a couple of weeks ago. The Islands Trust currently is undertaking an exercise to include a property tax notice insert for the rest of the trust area. So this will be the first time that we're undertaking that exercise. It'll be an insert that's included with the property tax notice for Islanders to give some background on who the Islands Trust is, what we do, NAPTAP, various sort of services that we have. And so we thought it would make some sense to offer this up for Bowen Island Municipality as well. So this is a project that will be undertaken by Director Frater and her team, so she can speak to it. I had mentioned it very briefly to Raj in phone conversation, and he thought that, it would be good to bring it to the council table to see if there was support for that exercise.
All right. Thanks, Julia. Claire, have you got anything else in there?
Can I ask a question here?
Sure, Liam.
Are the regional districts participating in this leaflet mail out as well? So like Capital Regional District, Nanaimo, Cowichan, and the likes?
The tax notices are sent out by the province, Liam, not by the regional districts.
Oh, sorry.
Correct, Julia?
I believe it is possible for the regional districts to participate in this. They would be undertaking the same sort of process that the Islands Trust is, where we prepare the insert and we send it off to the provincial surveyor of taxes. They would take care of printing it off and including it in the mail out with the tax notice.
Right. So is the province participating in that?
Yes.
Yes. So it's, if I might, so the province sends it out with the tax assessment notice, and it's conceivable that both the regional district, the applicable regional district, and Islands Trust notices would be in that mailing together.
And the surveyor of taxes charges the Islands Trust 5%, I think, for the privilege of collecting the taxes on their behalf for what they remit.
Interesting.
They give it back to us in a grant. Just that's a note of humor.
That's an interesting point, Peter. I wonder if we should compare the amount they get, but pay in the grant to what they actually charge.
I suspect it might be similar.
Well, I'm expecting the province would not want you to do that comparison. So
easy to do.
Yeah. Right.
Well, I guess we're going to need a little bit more information on that. And that'll be a council decision going forward. So if we can just do a staff to staff thing and see what that looks like, I guess we can.
My only question had to do with, I think we're bumping at the top of the postage charge now, so it might jump us up into the next post meter bracket.
And
But,
we would be happy to contribute to that if that was required.
yeah. We're just talking about one page, 8.5 by
That's
11 or 8.5 by 14?
8.5 by
11.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, you can see the one that it's on our package. I'm sure that Julia or Claire can send it to, or Sue Ellen would have it.
Yeah.
The draft, the one that we're approving, and I'm sure it would have, it would have to be modified for Bowen, but because it's a different structure, because we talk about local planning services in our notice, and we, of course, you don't avail yourself of those. But
so you can change that paragraph to explain how
or
the
that
levy
section,
works.
yeah. But the graphics are already done. It's
Yeah.
quite a nice piece of work. We're hoping to get it out.
Yeah, that'd be great to see a draft of that. So.
Great.
Right, so we'll leave it that staff can collaborate on that then. That'd be terrific.
Can we, could we please leave it at least
Michael?
before any form of decision is taken, we're going to get a very clear draft of just what is being sent here, because we have no prior experience, or we have no prior usage of our annual tax roll assessment being used for anyone's form of information, sales, propaganda, just general information, call it what you like. So we're on new ground here, and if it's proposing a certain a point of view, then I hope that if that point of view isn't universally held, that there is an opportunity also in the same package to put up points of view which may not reflect what is in the first piece of paper. So I see this as a bit of a slippery slope. I'm actually personally not particularly keen on this tax assessment. The tax assessment contains bad news as a rule. It's rather like advertising in the during the traffic forecast and telling people about the crashes and jams, and then telling them about how wonderful your product is. I really can't see the huge plus. So I hope we'll consider this very carefully, because it certainly doesn't sit well with me unless there's an alternative to put forward, if required, an alternative point of view. And I say that as an elected trustee. So let's be having a look at it, please, in the greatest possible detail.
Yeah, and just so you should know that it's actually a for information piece. It's not an advertising or a point of view. It's an information piece about how the tax assessment is divvied up.
No,
Great. And Michael,
understand
it would come to council before we included it. And,
absolutely. Yeah. So if staff to staff, if we can have a look at what it looks like, and then we'll bring it to council and see what happens there. Thank you. Okay,
Thank
so
you very much,
3.4. Sorry, somebody out there.
Thank you.
Okay, 3.4 is forest lands, natural resource operations, or rural development, and crown land agreements. So there's a thing on crown logging on Bowen. Motorized use on Mount Gardner trails, which we're still waiting to hear back on. Crown logging, we got to buy this year and send a letter saying we hope it's going to be permanent. Anybody want to comment on those? It's just Sue Ellen, go ahead.
Sure. I just thought it would be good to bring each other up to date, since these are two projects that we have asked the Islands Trust to help Bowen with. So it's an area of collaboration already, and I thought maybe we could touch base on it in our annual joint meeting here. And I think, Gary, you just started to touch base on the logging in the letter that we just sent. Maybe you can fill them in, because I haven't told them about that.
Okay, well, there wasn't that much to it. It was a council decision to send a letter, because we did get a note from the logging, what's it called? The
BC Timber Sales?
BC Timber Sales, that the notice of the logging they were going to do in Bowen Island wasn't included in that. It might not have been our area, but we were quick to pick up on it and just send a letter back and said, we're very happy to see that Bowen isn't there, and we will re-emphasize our request that we are pulled out of the timber sales. And so we sort of left it at that. And I don't believe there's been a response to it at that point. So
He did write back just to confirm, because that's what we asked.
yeah.
And said that we weren't in it and that he was going to send more info later. So there may be info.
Yeah, so we haven't got the more info. We got the fact that we weren't in it for now, but I don't think the more info part has come back to us yet. So we'll see how that goes. Motorized use on Mount Gardner.
Gary?
Sorry.
While we're still on logging, sorry,
Yes.
I didn't stick my head. What's going on Gambier?
Dan Rogers?
Yeah.
Well, besides the, there's a couple of private crown leases on the west side that are up for renewal in I think in mid 2021, and that's causing a fair amount of public comment. The main part of the island is that was subject to some discussion of logging. What is it? It's got to be 7 or 8 years ago now, 6 or 7 anyway. Is still in a place of stasis. I think we're just waiting to see what happens. I'm guessing there's probably discussions that we're not privy to at this point related to probably with the Squamish Nation, but we don't know. We haven't heard anything. I will tell you, we probably will flush out a bit of what it might look like, because we're doing it where there's a project on Gambier for an OCP review with 3 basic items on it, fairly large items, but one of them is the forestry lands and how to zone those and how to deal with those. And I'm guessing that on referral to the province and other places, we'll probably flush out what the nature of current plans are, but we haven't heard anything specific related to those big swaths of crown lands for a few years.
And Squamish Nation hasn't been making any noises about community forests like they did with Squamish and Whistler when they got set up?
Not publicly, they haven't been, but who knows what discussions they're having with the province that we aren't, nation to nation that we aren't privy to. So.
All right, Rob.
Yeah, thanks, Gary. Quick question. I don't know, Peter, if you're the right person to answer this, but just, we've talked a bit about sort of the unique scenarios, ecosystem-wise, especially water retention and whatnot on our islands. And I'm wondering, has IT done any specific work to basically set a higher level of concern with BC Timbers about logging on islands? Is there any consideration the fact that we are islands, that logging is maybe less appropriate than maybe it would be on the mainland, where we don't have water restrictions and whatnot, and all these extra sort of concerns that an island would have?
Well, thank you, Rob, for that question. That's a terrific question. Indeed, there's a lot of discussion that's going on. And in fact, last year through the UBCM process, we did actually speak with the minister at the time with regards to what often appears to be a conflict between the Islands Trust mandate and forestry practices on some of the islands. And we were able to achieve a recognition and understanding of that. And so some work is advancing ever so slowly on that as a general concept. But certainly there's interest at council and on the islands for tree cutting regulations and overall timber harvesting in respect of climate change. And on Salt Spring, indeed, we're embracing timber harvesting and housing and climate change together to come to understand and reconcile that in order to build houses, you end up clearing trees and indeed farming and all these other activities. And so it's a matter of looking at the ecosystems, not individually, but as it works as a sustainable mix of interests and concerns and protection across the board. So there's work that's going on. As with all government activity, some of it is slow, and of course having an election and stuff in the last number of months, it's taking a while for the government with the pandemic to get kick-started again. But we certainly expect to have some more conversations on that very topic.
Great.
What you meant to say is some of it's slower. It's all slow.
If I could just add to that, and maybe
ahead,
the
Dan, yeah.
CAO may want to add, or the Director of Trust Area Services, of course, the Trust Council did pass a couple of motions in the fall related to developing strategies around the report from, what's that group off Pender called? The
Raincoast
Conservation?
Raincoast.
Raincoast, which had a whole suite of solutions that are proposed ideas that were sort of particular to the islands. And that's a project that's on our well, come to our Trust Council and we'll see if we add it to our strategic plan or not. But because it's proposed to add to a strategic plan. So there's an awareness, Rob, of what you're talking about, that there, and it seemed, I'd say until now, it's probably, from my perspective, been playing out sort of a bit island by island, because it's slightly different in every place, but has evolved, as the chair has said, over the last couple of years, an understanding that this is a more concerted approach to the province and forestry issues and protection of the coastal Douglas fir and the western hemlock and all of the various sensitive ecosystems are important. And that work is sort of part of our work project. I mean, the director may have some more ideas, or the chair, the CAO, I see his hand up.
Thank you for the question through the chair. It's a sophisticated one, and you've pointed out where I think the trust is going, and I would actually have Vice Chair Patrick might speak on this as well, and that is the link between water resourcing and water budgets on the islands and our approach as the Islands Trust to a developed area and water budgeting and developing a framework on water and forestry and forest cover. And I think that we've got a bit more maturity on the water projects that we're working at. And I know that Vice Chair Patrick is sitting on the Regional Planning Committee and working through that specific work. And Trust Council has indicated more and more interest in forestry, and I think that ultimately there may be a link between those two things as you've described it. We are looking at the PMFL, the challenges around the PMFL and the ability for local governments. If indeed the Islands Trust is a special area, how can we practically have that be the case? And some accommodation under the PMFL has been the subject of a couple UBCM meetings, and now more pointed discussion around that. Also, the discussion around the use of development permits and the ability for us to have significant enforcement around development permits and development permit areas. So those three areas I think are in movement and moving forward. So I thank you for your question.
Okay.
Can I just ask a clarification for Russ's comment about
Go ahead.
development permits? You're meaning development permits on Crown land, right, Russ?
No, we're talking on private lands.
Oh, so you're talking about development permits for PMFL?
Yeah, so the big challenge is, you can put a development permit out there, but if it's PMFL, you're not going to have much recourse.
We're fortunate on Bowen, we don't have any PMFL lands. So if people want to know, that's private managed forest lands, and you can sign up with the province. It's another program, but I don't think we've got it on Bowen.
No, we don't.
Oh, crap.
But I think Laura was going to say something there.
Laura, go ahead, and then we'll take Suhan back to Ellen.
Yeah, and I just wanted to build on CEO Hudson Pillar's statement there. The freshwater strategic work that's being done and the linking with the coastal Douglas fir is very powerful, because it also could lead to other tools that could be available through the Sustainable Water Act and other things to protect those the forests in the watershed.
Thank you. So,
Yeah, I was just going to mention, well, a couple of things. One of them is there's sort of private stewardship around forests happening too for people who own big chunks of private land and might wish to log them. There's a few options. This is a sheet that Islands Trust Conservancy sent out in the summer, a mailing, and it points out some of the options and ways to protect land, as well as the natural areas tax exemption that you can get through the Islands Trust. And but also one of the things the Islands Trust can do is have agreements with Crown land. And I don't know, Claire, if you want to give us a little update on, I know we've got an old agreement. I'm not sure if it's still in place and what it has to do with logging.
So through the chair, I'm just happy. Yeah, so happy to give a short update. We do have a long-term project, which to update the very many, I think 5 or 6 agreements that we have regarding Crown lands in the whole trust area, a number of which are held with Bowen Island Municipality, Islands Trust, and an entity of the province. So we are in dialogue with FLNO, and it has been made a priority of the ministry as a result of one of the UBCM meetings that was held. So we have a dedicated staff person working with us. So I'm more optimistic now that we have resources available to now work on an agreement. So these are it's not quick discussions, but I'm hopeful that within a year or so, we might have a draft agreement. I am keeping in dialogue with Bonnie Brokenshire of your staff, and I'll pull her in as the discussions evolve around those agreements, and that eventually there'll be one coming to your council for review. So I'm certainly aware of Bowen's interest, and I'm keeping those in mind as we have these conversations.
thank you, Claire. Okay, back to you, Sue Ellen. You still?
Yeah, just one more thing I wanted to mention was that I think Laura referred to it, or somebody referred to the groundwater mapping and freshwater strategy. These are some of the things that are in our Islands Trust strategic plan, and we're doing a Bowen strategic plan too. So I'm just hoping to find areas where they overlap. One of those might be water sustainability, as you're referring to, Rob. And I think there might be some opportunities for Bowen to collaborate in groundwater mapping, and maybe we can get to that down under 3.9.
We've just done a couple of studies on our aquifers on the west side of the island.
Yeah, we've been trying to move towards a water master plan for the entire island. And as you know, we have 7 water systems that the municipality is responsible for, and multiple private systems and on the island. And we haven't been able to get unified agreement with all of the systems to do the comprehensive master plan, but we're effectively doing it piecemeal. And so we've done most of the aquifer mapping in the sensitive areas, and as well as the surface water assessment,
Symmetry,
and sustainability or sustainable yields on both aquifer and surface water. So we're basically going to be piecemealing them together towards our master plan. Happy to collaborate where appropriate.
Yeah. Okay, Peter, sorry, I overlooked you. Keep moving around on my screen here. So over to Peter.
Oh, well, you didn't overlook me. I only raised my hand up just a little while ago, but just thought before you moved on that I would just like to make an observation that I think is important when we're talking about forestry and water, particularly, and of course, islands. And that the forestry and water are provincial ministries responsible for those assets, I'll call it, natural assets. And the Islands Trust, of course, is mandated by the province to preserve and protect the islands. And as an agency of the province, we've now managed to draw some attention to the conflict between other provincial agencies and the delivery of the preserve and protect mandate of the Islands Trust. And I think that's a significant voice at the table, that I just feel that it's appropriate to mention that, and that as a member of the Islands Trust, not everybody will think that our voice is very loud, but certainly there are questions that we can raise that are significant and are heard. So of course we will continue to do that. And water and forestry is two of the common factors that make the island special.
Yeah, very special. Can't survive here without the water, can we? I'm just going to go. No, not for long. I'm just going to go back to the agenda here, and just conscious of time. So we motorized use on Mount Gardner trails. Does anybody want to touch on that? What the status of that is? Maureen, would you be up on that, or David? I got Liam back over there. He's keen.
I don't have anything new since our letter or request for information back 3-4 months ago.
From Tom Blackbird.
Yeah. So
this is where I may want to connect with Claire offline and see who you're talking to. So every time I talk with the assistant deputy ministers at Flinrow, they're very encouraging and supportive, and assure me that their staff are going to be collaborative, and this is a priority for them, because we had a very fruitful meeting with the previous minister at UBCM. We have not yet met with the new minister, but we have not got any traction with staff. We came very close to actually having a meeting, but the day of the meeting they canceled on us, and so that's been the nature of their engagement with us. It's been frustrating, to say the least. Having been a provincial bureaucrat myself for many years, I feel shameful for how we're being treated. But we continue to pester them, and I'll try different tactics, I think, going forward.
Yeah, we'll see how that works. All right, thanks. And part A on that is a report from Trustee Fast support regarding Mount Gardner trails dated May 18th, 2020.
Yeah, that's an old one. That's just sort of there for background.
Okay, just information. Okay.
It's an info item.
Yeah, Islands Trust Conservancy update. And again, that's
I'll let Sue Ellen carry that. She's the executive committee representative, appointed representative on the Islands Trust Conservancy, and really want to thank her for the work that she does there. And I'll just turn that over to you, Sue Ellen.
Sure.
Perfect. Thanks, Peter.
I'm just delighted to report on the Islands Trust Conservancy. I think it's so much fun. Anyway, I wanted to let you know that Islands Trust Conservancy, which has the 3 nature reserves on Bowen, also recently they've got a new nature reserve on Keats Island. And Dan can tell us a little bit about that. It's a tiny little reserve, but it comes with an attached sort of conservation covenant along the coastline to Salmon Rock, and beautiful property, a long time in coming. And I think the first nature reserve for Keats, but that's kind of in our neighborhood. So I think I've told you about that before, but that was the 30th nature reserve in 30 years. And the Islands Trust Conservancy has got some new grant money coming in, the $495,000 that we got through the federal government to work on preserving and protecting species at risk. And so there'll be a new some new positions hired for that because we got the grant money. And so Kate Emmings is now the manager, and Catherine Mark. Anyway, there's been some staff changes, and so we're in a good position to go forward. And what else did I want to mention? We've got we adopted a new fund development strategy, and I just wanted to show you, we've redesigned the newsletter that goes out, because we do, Islands Trust Conservancy does raise a lot of money. That's where the acquisitions are funded from, and the support that we give to local conservancies like Bowen Island Conservancy. And it's all donations. So the Islands Trust Conservancy is a registered charity, and so we do a lot of fundraising, and we're getting more organized about that. And we when I showed you the some of the stewardship things that we do, and it's all based on the regional conservation plan that I held up at last night's council meeting, just that it's science-based. And that, I think that's all I wanted to talk about at this point, unless anybody's got any questions, and which I can answer, or Claire could probably answer better.
I'm just looking out there. I don't think we've got anybody with a question. Thank you, Sue. And we're going to move on to 3.6, which is the heritage overlay mapping available to Bowen. Does anybody want to speak to that?
I'll just introduce it.
Thank you.
Anyway, we've got budget included in this budget cycle to do heritage overlay mapping to help us understand where cultural heritage sites and settler and colonial heritage sites are throughout the islands, in order to be able to provide protection to those elements. And certainly, if there was interest at Bowen, we can make that available to you and participate with you as a collaborative piece of work. We think it's important for community planning as we move forward, and that's why we're taking it on.
All right, thanks, Peter. Sue Ellen?
I haven't mentioned, because we only heard it at the meeting last night, but I just wanted to bring up that Bowen heard yesterday, and Maureen can speak more to this, that Metro Vancouver Parks for the Davies Orchard area down in the Cove has received some heritage funding, and I'll let Maureen talk to that. But I wanted to say maybe there's some overlap here, in that I'm not sure whether that work down there, I believe there's a big shell midden across the bottom of the festival field, and maybe there's some mapping that could help inform the planning. I'm not sure, but anyway, over to you, Maureen. You can fill everybody in on the news.
Sure,
Maureen and then Liam. Yeah.
Thank you, Sue Ellen. As Sue Ellen mentioned, Metro Vancouver Parks was the recipient of some significant amount of grant funding towards the Davies Orchard restoration. Significant amount of grant funding is $450,000. This is through a unique heritage infrastructure fund that the provincial government established. It's part of a $28 million grant stream. It's the largest single injection into heritage infrastructure that the province has seen. So $450,000 does not pay all the bills for the project. So at the moment, Metro Parks is figuring out how to proceed with less than the full amount that they need, but certainly a significant chunk of cash for a project that was stalled after it had gone through its planning process, stalled for lack of money.
All right, thanks, Maureen. Liam, over to you.
Well, I just wanted to ask if the heritage overlay mapping was being done for the entire trust area, or is it for area specific projects, like island specific or trust area specific?
I'm going to look to staff for the details on that.
Thank you.
Or CAO Hotzenpiller.
Yeah, my understanding is that this is work that's going to be across the trust area. You know, this is an initial level, I would think, this level of funding. Arc Branch, there are some gaps in the mapping that the database that they have. So we think that this is a way to have some good practical relationships moving forward with First Nations, certainly as we're approving different land use applications. This issue comes up continuously, and we think that we can use some of the tools in the Heritage Conservation under the Local Government Act to be more robust. So I think the intention, you know, we're just stepping into it, and we haven't actually passed the budget. The budget's coming up in, as you would expect, in a month or so, and we'll start. But I have heard nothing that says that it's limited to one area or another.
Allison?
So I just wanted to follow up on, so this is work when you're talking about heritage mapping, is it work you're doing with the archaeology branch to map First Nations heritage in the islands? 'Cause I thought I read something somewhere and I can't remember. Too
Certainly,
much comes across the inbox to remember where it came from.
Certainly, that would be included, but this is the intention here is cultural heritage, settler heritage, landscapes, culturally significant flora and fauna. So it is the swath of things associated with heritage mapping.
So are you going to get the info from the heritage branch, or are you providing info?
I think we're going to have to go out to the marketplace to get more info, but
okay, so
to supplement what they've got. I don't think it's a matter of sending files back and forth, but there has to be better data put together. So that's my understanding. Claire might know better than I would at this point.
So we've got a heritage commission of which Maureen sits on, and we've just done quite a bit of significant work in identifying heritage properties on Bowen, and we've just created a heritage register. So I guess, can we get information by just sending a letter to the archaeology branch and say, would you please provide us with your mapping of of what you know is archaeologically significant on Bowen?
Well, I would think you would have those relationships already, or some version of it. I think what we're talking is an enhanced version of that.
Okay. So my next question is, I've always heard that our planners can go to the archaeology branch and find out what First Nations heritage there is on the island, or special sites or things, middens, things we've got to worry about, but it's never public because they don't want people going and robbing them. So is this going to end up being a public database of middens and all sorts of other stuff out of this, or? Because it's really hard if you're buying a property and then all of a sudden you find out you've got a midden in the middle of your backyard.
Yeah, it's hard to unpack all of the questions you've asked there. You know, we're going to proceed with this work and see where it takes us. But I think really where we're going to end up, or try and end up, is to have better vetting at the outside of the land use planning process. That's what this is in support of. And we can use non-site specific tools and site specific tools associated with that. And as the project develops a little bit, maybe we can provide you, those detailed answers.
Okay, thanks. And just going back to the Heron newsletter, is it available electronically rather than getting a paper copy that somebody has to use paper to print and pay postage to mail?
Yes, I think the hard copy is still available because some of the people that we're trying to reach prefer hard copy, but I'm sure it's online, isn't it, Claire? Yeah, so I'll send you a link.
Well, so I can change my subscription to it somehow then by going online? It just,
Yes. Yeah, if you subscribe through the Islands Trust website, you can go in and change your preferences.
And they'll send an email notice out when the new issue's out, sort of thing?
That's right. And it will be somewhat simpler than it is now within the new website when we launch it.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any other questions on that? All right. Yeah, well, it'll be interesting to have a look at that once something comes out. The Islands Council and Bowen Island Municipality Protocol Agreement, and just for information also?
Well, only in as much as to open the door that if there's a concern or interest in any amendments to that protocol agreement, that it would be probably best for the CAOs to facilitate a conversation there. If there's any administrative updating or anything like that that requires getting done, it would be a process. And so we're not looking for processes particularly, but if there's an interest that Bowen has, we'd certainly consider that. And I think that's just want to flag that's out there. It's the tool that describes our relationship in many ways. And it's actually a nice document, I think.
Yeah, maybe we can work on the requisition tool.
Maybe, yeah.
Well, we talked about that, Peter, and I haven't forgotten. I felt, a little disappointed that we didn't take it to the next step and, maybe take some of our considerations into effect. It's not that we want to be out of the trust, and everybody knows that. It's that there's a feeling that we're sort of unreasonably taxed on that part of it, but it has to do with property assessments and a whole bunch of stuff. But we're not going to give up on it. We certainly would like to reopen that conversation. Anybody else want to talk about that? I see Michael there.
Yeah, this is an interesting document, and actually I have to tell you, speaking against myself, I found it per chance in some documents. I didn't even realize until some little time ago that we had a protocol agreement as such. So I stumbled across it and I took it to our CAO, who was then very new, just arrived, and why would he know that we had a protocol agreement? My suggestion is that we actually review individually this agreement and make any suggestions we have to our CAO, and he then could consolidate these, and then we could discuss it at council for discussion with the trust, because it should surely be our basis for discussion. And I mean, the mayor has mentioned, so I suppose he's given me a bit of an in here, which he may regret. And it's probably disingenuous to quote yourself, but in the letter I submitted, I did say, I hope our meeting today will provide a springboard for further constructive dialogue on the subject. And I'm now talking about the cost of membership within the trust. And this document, I think, would set a formal review on an annual basis. And I think it's a document that should be brought into being. We've had it for a long time. I think it's useful. I think it serves a real function. And I'm going to suggest that we provide any thoughts on it to our CAO, and then we can discuss it together and then bring it forward to the executive of Islands Trust, because there are some issues that need resolving. If we don't resolve them, as I said, they will fester. We're going to get a demand for a referendum. We're going to be a cause of great publicity for that. And that will spring over to Salt Spring as well, who are showing considerable interest on what is happening here in terms of a demand for a referendum. So friends and others from Salt Spring are curious to know where we're going. And at the moment, we're not going anywhere. So this could be a document, perhaps, that serves as a very professional and proper bridge between the two organizations. And I put this forward because I don't have anything better to offer in terms of a simple and well-established process. And I think we should make the most of it. Well, if we don't, then I think we'll be remiss, and I think it will be to everyone's cost.
All right, thank you, Michael. Over to Allison.
Oh, I didn't put my hand down.
Okay, Maureen.
Thanks, Gary. And I'd just like to remind most of council that this protocol agreement, if I'm remembering correctly, was developed jointly with the Islands Trust during the 2014-2018 term. And there was quite a lot of discussion at the table at that point. And it was, my recollection, it was envisaged as something that would be an evolving document. So we have 2 new members of council in this term. And I'm not sure, perhaps, Michael, you were away at the time when the work was done on the initial protocol agreement. So it's coming as a surprise to you. And we also have a new CAO. So perhaps it would be a good thing to for Bowen Council to take a look and then to carry on the conversation with the Islands Trust if changes are warranted. It's always good to review things and get a sense of whether they're still as current as they ought to be, or whether there are some other issues that have arisen. So I think in terms of Bowen Council looking at this, it also might be good to hear from Islands Trust staff in particular, if there are any things that you'd like us to consider when we're taking our first look at the protocol agreement. Maybe there are some things that are challenges for you that we should be keeping in mind.
Anything from your side, Peter?
Well, I can't say that there's anything particular on the political side at the moment. Certainly, as we've had these discussions about the requisition, we've reflected on this, the protocol agreement, as well as your letters patent and the responsibility of the Islands Trust to the Federation, the broad Islands Trust area. And so I think that if there was interest in some kind of amendments to the protocol, then certainly an analysis on your side of areas for improvement, we would welcome them to look at them and have that conversation. I might just turn to the CAO about what that might look like, and if he concurs with my political representation at this point.
Thanks, Sherlock. No, I agree. I take comfort in this document. I would hope others do too, at least in my role. I became familiar with it through the Salt Spring referendum process when I was looking at a variety of different futures. But these things can, I think, we essentially we do 75 to 80% of this. This spells out how, we know what we're supposed to do, and this says how we do it, and the protocols between us, and it's always good to reflect on what those are. And I'm happy to work with Liam or get any of council's considerations back to Liam, and then I can work with executive committee and ultimately trust council around any items. But I do think it's worth reviewing them every number of years to make sure that they're satisfying everybody's needs.
Good point. Thanks, Russ. So back to Sue Ellen.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just pointing out that this wanted to just correct something, is that 2014 was the last time that this protocol agreement was updated, but it dates to back 2004, I believe. I'm looking at one of the pages that's called the tax requisition calculation, has 2004, yeah. Amended 2012, and then amended 2013, maybe.
Yeah.
Anyway, but it's sort of from back in the beginnings of the municipality.
Yeah, it's a requirement under your letters patent that we have an agreement, and this is that agreement.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's all. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Liam.
I was hoping that some folks here would have that history, because in the protocol agreement, it does talk about the municipal tax requisition calculation, but it looks like it's an entirely separate document.
It is.
It's because it starts as chapter 7, page 1. And I'm not sure where that comes from. Is it embedded in some other protocol or some other policy or some other thing?
It's a financial policy. It's a separate animal. I'll come down and spend half an hour with you and go through the history.
Okay, thank you.
Hey,
yeah.
Okay.
You can dial me back into that call too. I could use a refresher,
okay.
Allison.
Yeah. Yeah, we've updated it. There was a big update done in 2010, and then there was another one done in 2014. And the 2014 one for the protocol agreement was the one that laid out the very nice, colorful flow charts and everything. That was okay. Linda Adams. That was she and I worked on those, and I don't recall us amending it. And I thought we had gone through the protocol agreement in detail when we had the first joint trust council BIM agreement back meeting in 2014, and also again in 2018. So that had always been part of our first sort of joint meeting when the trust did an orientation for everybody. So if we didn't, we should have, I guess. And then the tax requisition is a separate policy calculation that's in the Islands Trust policies. And that partly stemmed from formulas from agreements between the province and the Islands Trust back in the late 90s.
Right. And so that was my second question, because from what I can tell, the tax requisition is embedded in policy, not legislation or regulation.
Yes.
That's right.
Right. So it is. Okay. So that's helpful.
I'm not sure whether that's completely the case. And that, probably some of this would be, we'd go back and forth, and, I think the Act spells out a fair amount of.
The Act, Section 147, sets out a formula.
Yeah, sets out the formula. It doesn't address administration.
The Act Section 47 does not have any formula in it. I looked at it today. It only
it says it has to be allocated on the basis of converted values for tax purposes.
Right. But that's only the how you derive the assessment. It doesn't derive the allocations.
There's three. Well, we could spend the whole of the rest of the meeting. There's three pots that are created by the Act.
Russ and Allison should have.
Yeah,
that's right.
I don't want to get too much into the weeds on it, but I just more so wanted to better understand the protocol agreement itself, and then where that came from, and then going forward, I agree. I think it would be very good for us to revisit that and make sure that it has the things in there that we all need to move the relationship forward.
Thank you, Liam. Michael?
I think the motto holds good, that evident confusion promotes clarification. So maybe in the near future, we could pull this to ground.
Yeah. There was, I agree. Well, I think we've got something to go forward with. I feel good about that we'll open this up again and have a pretty good look at it, because I didn't feel like we were quite done with this yet. So let's look at it again. There was one item on there, and that was the introduction of the Bowen mapping system. I don't know if that was Hope?
Daniel's on the line, so I'm betting he's presenting something. And he's hung in here with us.
Here he
comes. It was just it was an item requested by Trustee Fast to have for information. So I think it's just an information piece. But Daniel, you're welcome to speak to it.
Daniel, you want to speak to it, or?
I think we're putting Daniel on the spot here.
Okay.
But
okay.
So I'm glad that Daniel's here, though, because he knows our GIS mapping system better than I definitely, and better than most. And I think I might have also suggested it be on the agenda, just because when talking with Russ a little while back, it seemed to be news to Russ that we had our own GIS online mapping system. And it's a very well put together tool. And just for other folks, like before I actually came to Bowen, I always used Map-It, the Islands Trust mapping system. And when I was considering this job, I used the Island Trust mapping system to research Bowen a bit. And then when I got here, I realized, I remember talking to, I think it was Daniel, and it's like, well, we've got our own mapping system. And I was like, oh my goodness. And it's actually quite good. And so, really it was just about letting folks at the Islands Trust know that we do have quite a comprehensive and rich mapping system that we use I use it on a daily basis, and that we use it for all of our planning purposes. And so any kind of and I believe that we have a good relationship with the Islands Trust on sharing GIS data that can be used on our mapping system or vice versa, and that we actually even go through the Islands Trust for our licensing agreements for GIS mapping software access. But yeah, I just wanted to make sure that folks were actually aware that we have quite a comprehensive and sophisticated mapping tool here on Bowen.
Okay, thanks, Liam.
evolved over the past 20 years. And now there's wanted to make sure everybody knew.
Does anybody have anything else to bring up? Okay, go ahead, Alison.
I'm waiting eagerly to see the RFP for the review on BC bid, and it hasn't shown up yet.
No, eh? What's the stat?
So that's a nice opportunity for me to speak to that. And Michael Kale and myself and CAO as administrative support sit on that select committee. And they've been meeting quite regularly since council. And the draft document has now been handed over, the initial draft document handed over to BC bid to get them to do a red line markup, I guess is how Lee Middleton calls it, to fill in some of the areas and help us make it a stronger document. And so we're anticipating that might come back to the committee for their next meeting, which is in another week or so, I think, probably a week away. And so we're just working through that process and developing that document and working with BC bid. So we anticipate that we'll be advancing in the near future. And I'll ask Michael Kale if he has anything else to offer.
No, thank you very much, Peter. That's precisely, we're meeting on Monday, and hopefully by then we will have, we'll put it to bed. It will be with BC bid and BC bid will move ahead with it. And that's exactly what we promised the trustees we would do as a steering committee, I think, and we will have faithfully lived up to our expectations.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, if there aren't any more comments, I'll bid adieu and we'll adjourn this meeting. I feel good going forward that there's still an open door there, and we'll try another run at collaboration. So thank you all. Thank you, Peter, and good to see you.
And it's still daylight out.
Yeah, Claire, that's
I've
nice
seen 3 or 4
change,
hands,
really.
Mr.
Maybe
Mayor.
you're under
Yeah.
the hand.
And good to see you. Sorry, comments?
One final remark before we all depart. Just remind everybody that on March the 3rd, we are holding the virtual open house on the Islands Trust Policy Statement Project, and that's from 7 o'clock till 9 o'clock in the evening. And if you go to the Islands Trust main webpage, you'll find a link there. And please join us to see what's happening with that body of work. It's a significant undertaking. It's advanced significantly. And we're hoping to advance that through the rest of this term to completion. Please join us if you can.
Thank you, Peter. Maureen, did you have a final comment?
Yeah, I did. I'm thinking about people who may be watching this this video, and at the very end there, and I don't want to belabor this, but at the very end there was a mention of a review. I wonder if just somebody could say very briefly what the purpose of the review is, for those who don't know.
Well, that's a good question, and perhaps there'd be a combination of efforts. But essentially, it's called a governance and management review, and ostensibly the intent is to look at how we're presently doing things and look for improvements and seek advice on improvements in order to better serve the preserve and protect mandate throughout the island. That's the short version.
Nuts and bolts. Yeah, that's good.
Can hear you,
Michael. I was just reaching for I have in front of me here the terms of reference, and I think, Peter, that without being unduly wordy, what you have captures the spirit of the purpose of a comprehensive performance review of the Islands Trust governance, management, and operations, and that is what it's all about. And so if anyone watching will say, what is this review? It is, in fact, it's to take a qualified consultant to undertake a comprehensive performance review of the Islands Trust governance, management, and operations, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But that's it in a sentence.
Perfect.
And
Thank you,
then
Michael.
we should just say for clarity, it's not a financial audit, and nor
No.
does it include the Islands Trust Conservancy.
Thank you.
Or
Thank you.
Bowen Island.
Or Bowen Island Municipality.
Or Bowen Island.
Yeah.
Although obviously there are implications with how we conduct ourselves that would reflect upon Bowen Island.
Absolutely. Rob, a final comment here?
Yeah, just a final comment. I just wanted to thank everybody for this meeting. You know, it's I'm a bit of a newer counselor, so I'm still trying to figure out Island Trust, and we got Metro overlapping everything here, and just having a bit of a closer connection, I think, to the other islands. I think a lot of people are looking forward to that and strengthening that relationship. And I think we got some good clarity. The mapping, whatnot, is great. And then I'm planning on kayaking over to your place this summer sometime. So I'll give you a shout when I get the guts to cross over there on a hopefully quiet day one day. So
I'd also to finish by encouraging all to, instead of looking to the east, to come out to the other side of the island, look to the west and to the north to see what the rest of your fellow islands in the islanders in the Islands Trust. As many of you know, or you can just watch Bob Turner's videos.
Yeah.
One or the other.
All right. Well, hopefully we'll
Thanks,
look over
Liam.
to Gambier's all logged out.
Bye, guys.
Oh, no. Oh, Dan, how's the fair, the dot going at on Gambier?
You got another couple hours?
Oh, okay. We'll have a private conversation.
You guys can do it. Go off air here.
That is Kate Louise's long-term project to try and secure that. I don't envy her.
Okay, because looking at the Crown Grant application, it looked like it was, going to be fine, but yeah.
Well,
okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody.
All right. Thank you all.
Cheers.
Bye.